They told me I was beautiful. I still hated my reflection. How can you be admired by everyone and still feel invisible to yourself? What if confidence isn't about looks or compliments, but something deeper that we rarely talk about? For years, I chased validation I never felt. I wore a mask so convincing even I believed it, until one moment broke everything. That moment changed how I saw confidence forever. Stay with me, because this might change your story too. If you're ready to rethink confidence, like and subscribe. Let's explore this together. They told me I was beautiful. I still hated my reflection. And that's the part no one warns you about. That you can have all the external validation in the world and still feel like you're not enough. I learned early how to smile politely when someone complimented me, how to say thank you, how to seem flattered, how to receive admiration as if it were nourishment. But I was starving, because deep down I wasn't collecting compliments. I was collecting evidence that I was faking it, that if they could see me without the makeup, without the posture, without the performance, they'd change their minds. We grow up hearing that confidence follows beauty, that once you're pretty enough, thin enough, stylish enough, then confidence will arrive, like a prize for all the effort. But what if I told you the prettiest girl in the room is sometimes the one who feels the most invisible? What if I told you that being beautiful, in the way society defines it, is not a shortcut to self-worth, but sometimes a detour, a mask so good it fools everyone, including the person wearing it? There's this illusion we're sold, especially in America, that beauty is a form of currency, that once you have it, doors will open, people will listen, and your inner doubts will melt away under the heat of attention. And for a while, they do. People treat you better. They remember your name. They stare a little longer. But here's what no one tells you. Admiration is not the same as acceptance. Attention is not the same as being seen. And being seen is not the same as being known. So we chase this idea that if we can just become more of what others desire, we'll finally become what we desire for ourselves. But when you're building your confidence on the applause of others, silence becomes terrifying. You need them to look at you, to tell you you're enough, because when they stop, you crumble. That's not confidence. That's dependency dressed in highlighter and false eyelashes. That's a girl in front of a mirror, adjusting her hair, but never her beliefs. I was that girl, and I know I'm not alone. In high school, I remember reading a study that said attractive people are more likely to be hired, more likely to be promoted, even more likely to be forgiven. Beauty, it seemed, wasn't just aesthetic, it was power. But what that study didn't explain was why so many women, praised for their looks, still feel like they're falling apart inside. Why models with perfect bone structure confess to feeling like frauds. Why girls crowned homecoming queen cry themselves to sleep. There's something deeper going on, and it has nothing to do with symmetry or skin. Psychologists call it the imposter phenomenon, originally used to describe high-achieving professionals who couldn't internalize their success. But it happens with beauty too, especially for women. We're taught that our worth is tied to how we appear, that our face is our front door, and it better look inviting, that we should be flattered by attention, grateful for objectification, and never complain, because at least you're pretty. But what happens when your worth is placed in something you didn't choose? Something time will take from you. There's also a model in sociology called the looking glass self, the idea that we form our self-image based on how we think others see us. So if people say you're beautiful, you must be. But here's the catch. If you've never believed it yourself, you just think they're wrong. Or worse, that they're seeing something that doesn't actually exist. You become suspicious of praise. You wonder what they want. And that disconnect between how others see you and how you see yourself becomes a battlefield. The confidence crisis isn't about a lack of admiration. It's about a lack of integration. A woman can hear "you're stunning" 100 times and still crumble at the thought of being alone in her own skin. Because confidence isn't built on what others see when they look at you. It's built on what you see when you're not looking at anyone else. And yet, we've built a culture that rewards appearance over authenticity, that tells women their value peaks in their 20s, that wrinkles are mistakes, and that aging is a flaw to correct. We've created a system where external approval is the oxygen, and then we wonder why so many of us are gasping for air. That was me. Gasping, smiling, performing, craving approval like a drug, and still feeling empty. I had no idea that what I was calling confidence was just practice like ability, and that the real thing, the deep-rooted, unshakable kind, was something I hadn't even met yet. So I did what most of us do. I tried to fix the feeling by fixing the surface. I bought better makeup. I watched YouTube tutorials late at night, chasing flawless skin and symmetrical eyeliner. I changed my hair color 4 times in 1 year. I signed up for fitness challenges, not because I loved my body, but because I hated it. I smiled wider, posted selfies when I didn't even like myself. I became fluent in the language of perfection, curated, filtered, and deeply afraid of being caught being human. That's the lie we're fed. If you feel insecure, just upgrade yourself. It's the logic of the beauty industry, the self-help market, and even our friend group sometimes. You're feeling low? You should try lash extensions. You'd feel so much better. New haircut, new you. Glow up, girl. But here's the dangerous truth. Treating a confidence wound with a beauty bandage doesn't heal it. It hides it until it festers. We start believing that if we just fix one more thing, we'll finally feel okay. If we get the right clothes, the right body, the right smile, the internal voice will shut up. But it doesn't. Because no matter how many things you fix on the outside, that voice doesn't speak to the mirror. It speaks to your worth. And it knows when you're lying. This is the toxic loop. Validation feels good for a moment, so we chase more of it. We learn how to be what others want, how to sparkle without needing to shine. We perform confidence like a role, and applause becomes our fuel. But when the performance ends, when we're alone, when no one is watching, we crash. And in that silence, we realize we don't even know who we were pretending to be. I became a master of pretending. I could walk into any room and look composed. I knew how to turn heads, how to hold eye contact, how to seem unfazed. But inside, I was constantly checking. Did I say the right thing? Did I laugh at the right moment? Did they still like me? I wasn't being confident. I was being careful. And careful is exhausting. We don't talk enough about that kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from always managing perception, from constantly polishing a version of yourself that feels safer than your truth. And when that version gets praised, it becomes harder to let it go, even when it's suffocating you. We think the problem is how we look, but the real problem is what we believe we have to look like in order to be loved. And that belief is what keeps so many of us stuck, tired, and wondering why we feel like imposters in our own skin. Everything changed the day I realized confidence wasn't something you perform. It's something you reclaim. Not from other people, not from your reflection, but from the quiet, neglected parts of yourself that you stopped trusting long ago. I used to think confidence would arrive once I became everything they wanted me to be. But real confidence, it began the moment I stopped trying to become and started trying to return. Return to what? To self-fidelity. That's the word I didn't know I was missing. Not self-esteem, not self-love. Self-fidelity, the loyalty to your own inner truth, the commitment to live in a way that reflects who you actually are, not who you've learned to be in order to be liked. Confidence, I discovered, is the byproduct of living in alignment with yourself, not of being perfect, but of being congruent, honest, whole. This is where the world got it wrong. It taught us to fake it till you make it, to rehearse charisma, to copy the mannerisms of the bold and beautiful. But you can't borrow someone else's confidence. It doesn't stick. It's like wearing shoes that aren't your size. They might look good in the mirror, but you can't walk far without hurting. When I finally stopped chasing the image and started listening inward, I met a different version of myself. Quieter, yes. Gentler, but grounded. She didn't need to be the most admired in the room to feel secure. She didn't need attention to feel alive. She didn't shrink when the spotlight moved. She was real, and she had been there the whole time, buried under layers of performance. What if we stopped asking how to be more confident and started asking how to be more loyal to ourselves? What if confidence isn't about becoming bolder, louder, more fearless, but about becoming more faithful to the truth of who we are, even when it's vulnerable? For me, that meant rewriting the rules, saying no when I used to say yes just to be liked, wearing clothes that made me feel safe, not just sexy, speaking up when it made my voice shake, looking in the mirror and asking, not do I look beautiful, but do I look like me? The more I practiced fidelity to myself, the less I needed to be validated by anyone else. And slowly, something shifted. Not all at once and not without fear, but piece by piece, I started to feel free. Not flashy, not flawless, just free. And in that freedom, I found a confidence that wasn't loud, but lasting. The world loves a confident woman, as long as she fits the script. We're flooded with images of her, the power suit and red lipstick, the perfect skin and unapologetic laugh, the Instagram caption that says self-made, while she sips something expensive on a rooftop. She's bold, magnetic, admired, and she never ever doubts herself. That's the stereotype. That's the box we're told to fit into if we want to be seen as confident or worth anything at all. But that's not real. That's branding. In reality, confidence looks different. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's soft. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, I'm enough, even when the world screams otherwise. The confident women I admire don't always walk into a room and demand attention. Sometimes they choose to leave the room entirely if it compromises their peace. Sometimes they say, I don't know. Sometimes they cry, and none of that makes them less confident. In fact, it's what makes them whole. Social media taught us that confidence means always looking like you have it together. But in the real world, confidence often means admitting you don't, and still showing up, still trying, still choosing to be seen in the messiness of becoming. The stereotype says confidence is the absence of insecurity. But in truth, it's the willingness to keep moving even when insecurity is sitting in the passenger seat. And beauty, the way it's sold to us, is often a trap disguised as empowerment. The promise is clear. Buy this, wear this, look like this, and you'll feel powerful. But the reality? We spend so much time managing our image that we forget how to feel, how to ask ourselves what we want beyond looking desirable. Because confidence isn't about being desired. It's about being aligned. And alignment doesn't always look like the highlight reel. I used to scroll through pictures of confident women and think, I'll never be her. And then one day I realized, maybe I was never supposed to be. Maybe the woman I was meant to be doesn't have a six-figure wardrobe or a viral quote under her photo. Maybe she has stretch marks and quiet mornings. Maybe her power isn't in her pose, but in her presence. That realization unraveled something. It made space. Space for me to show up without the costume, to stop chasing the fantasy and start meeting myself in reality, where confidence isn't a performance but a practice, not a moment of perfection but a life of consistency. There's a moment I go back to often, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. I was standing in a Target fitting room in Chicago, fluorescent lights humming overhead, trying on a dress that didn't fit the way I wanted it to. I stared at myself in the mirror, disappointed again. Not just in the dress, in me. I felt like a fraud, someone who talked about confidence to her friends, who gave advice, who looked like she had it together. And yet, there I was, avoiding my own eyes, measuring my worth in the tightness of a zipper. That day, I didn't buy the dress. I didn't cry either, but I did something new. I looked straight into the mirror and didn't flinch. I didn't smile or pose. I just looked. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself, who are you trying to impress? And at what cost? That was the beginning of something, a slow, quiet unraveling. I started paying attention to the choices I made out of performance, the heels I wore that made my feet ache, the filter I used because I hated my pores, the silence I held when I disagreed, but didn't want to seem too much. I started listening to the girl beneath all of that. She was tired. She didn't want more attention. She wanted more rest. She didn't want to be envied. She wanted to be understood. Confidence began to feel less like something I had to build and more like something I had to protect, like a fragile flame I'd been shielding from wind all my life, not realizing I was the one creating the storm. I remember the first time I went to a brunch with no makeup. I was nervous, sure, but also I was proud because I was there fully. I wasn't hiding behind lashes or lipstick. I was showing up as me, and it felt right. That's the thing no one tells you, that the most transformative moments aren't always loud or cinematic. Sometimes they happen in a Target fitting room or on a random Tuesday morning when you put on jeans that fit your body now, not the one you're punishing yourself for not having. Sometimes confidence sounds like no, or not today, or actually, I don't agree. I wish I could say there was a switch, a single moment when I stepped into confidence and never looked back. But that's not how it works. It came in pieces, in tiny rebellions, in learning to trust myself more than I feared judgment. And over time, those moments stacked up into something solid, something quiet but immovable, something mine. The master concept that changed everything for me was this: confidence is not a destination, it's a relationship. Not with how you look, not with how others see you, but with your own inner self. And like any relationship, it needs honesty, consistency, and care. It needs presence. You can't outsource it. You can't fake it for long. You have to show up for yourself, again and again, in the quiet, unglamorous moments when no one else is watching. So I started small. I began treating myself the way I would treat someone I respected, not someone I was trying to fix. I gave myself permission to rest, to mess up, to not always look polished. I stopped asking, "What will they think?" and started asking, "Does this feel true?" I stopped using confidence as a costume and started using it as a compass. I paid attention to what drained me, the social events where I performed charm like a dance, the people I tried to impress even when they didn't make me feel safe. I gave myself space to walk away from them, not in anger, but in loyalty. Loyalty to my energy, to my peace, to my inner truth. And I also started practicing what I now call micro-alignments. Tiny moments where I could choose self-fidelity over self-editing, saying I'm not comfortable with that, even if it made things awkward, leaving the photo unfiltered, wearing the jeans that felt good, not the ones that looked good. These moments were small, but over time, they added up. They created a version of me I could trust. You don't need to change your life overnight to build real confidence. You need to notice the moments when you abandon yourself and slowly stop doing that. You need to catch yourself in the act of shrinking and whisper, "Not today." You need to come back to yourself again and again until it becomes your default posture. Not shoulders back and chin high, but soul settled and heart steady. One of the biggest shifts I made was asking better questions. Not, how can I be more confident? But, what part of me feels unsafe right now? Not, how can I get them to like me? But, do I like how I show up around them? These questions changed everything because they brought the focus back to where it belongs. Me, my truth, my peace. I still care about how I look, but it's not the foundation anymore. It's not the root. It's just one piece of a much deeper relationship. And that depth, that self-loyalty, is what carries me now. Have you ever looked confident on the outside, but felt like a stranger to yourself inside? Share that moment in the comments. I'll read everyone. Even after all the insight, all the small rebellions, and all the quiet wins, there's still a voice inside that asks, "But are you sure you're enough?" That's the hardest part. Not the external pressure, but the internal resistance that lingers long after the applause fades. It's subtle, it's familiar, and sometimes it still sounds like me. Because this isn't just a confidence issue, it's a conditioning issue. When you've spent years equating your worth with how well you're received, it takes time to learn how to receive yourself. There's no shortcut around that. And even when you know better, even when you've healed so much, those old neural pathways still light up. That old story still whispers. It's the story that says, be smaller, and they'll like you more. Be prettier, and you'll be safer. Be perfect, and they won't leave. We don't just unlearn that overnight. And the truth is, confidence doesn't mean you never feel that voice again. It means you stop letting it drive. You stop giving it the final word. You hear it, you nod, and then you walk forward anyway. But walking forward takes energy. And some days you just don't have it. Some days you look in the mirror and feel nothing. Some days you don't recognize the growth because the fear is louder. And that's normal. That's human. I used to think confidence meant never feeling insecure again. Now I know it means recognizing when insecurity is trying to speak and gently not believing it. It means catching the spiral before it starts. It means having the strength to pause instead of perform. And most of all, it means forgiving yourself on the days when you forget all of this. That's the part no one glamorizes. The relapse. The doubt that creeps in just when you thought you'd grown past it. The way a single comment or a photo from the wrong angle can send you back into questioning everything. But the difference now, I don't spiral as far. I don't stay down as long. Because I've built enough of a relationship with myself to know the truth isn't gone. It's just quiet for a moment. And sometimes, that's the work. Sitting with the quiet, not filling it with noise, not reaching for validation to soothe it. Just sitting there, reminding yourself that discomfort is not danger, and that you don't need to abandon yourself just because the doubt came back to visit. Nothing tested my confidence more than relationships. Not the romantic ones at first, but the friendships. The ones where I was always the listener, the helper, the one who made others feel beautiful while secretly wondering if I was just the backdrop. I didn't know it then, but I had confused being agreeable with being lovable. I thought if I was easy to be around, they'd keep me around. So I made myself small in rooms where I should have expanded. I held my tongue when I disagreed. I smiled even when I was hurt, because I believed being chosen meant being less of myself. And in romantic relationships, that belief only deepened. I remember a man once said to me, "You're so beautiful when you're quiet." And instead of feeling insulted, I felt flattered, as if my silence made me more desirable. I laugh now, but back then I took it as a compliment. I thought it meant I was doing something right, that being palatable was the same thing as being loved. But it wasn't. It was performance. And it was lonely. It took me years to realize that if I had to dim my light to keep someone, I was never really seen in the first place. And that confidence in relationships isn't about appearing unfazed or unattached. It's about knowing what you need and being brave enough to name it. It's about risking rejection in the name of honesty. It's about saying, "This matters to me," even if it makes your voice shake. The most confident thing I ever did was walk away from a relationship that looked perfect on the outside, but made me feel invisible on the inside. He praised my appearance constantly, told me how lucky he was, posted pictures of us with captions about how beautiful I was, but never once asked how I felt, what I feared, what I dreamed of when the room went quiet. I was an ornament, polished, admired, but not truly known. And I stayed longer than I should have. Not because I loved him, but because I loved how it looked from the outside. Leaving felt like failure, but it was freedom. Because for the first time, I wasn't choosing what looked impressive. I was choosing what felt honest. I wasn't trying to be adored. I was trying to be understood. And that shift, as quiet as it was, marked the beginning of something new. Connection without compromise. Confidence in relationships means you stop begging for breadcrumbs and start trusting that you deserve the whole meal. It means you let go of the fear that your truth will make you unlovable and start believing that the right people will never require you to betray yourself. So, what do you actually do when you're ready to stop performing and start living in your confidence? You start with presence. You slow down enough to hear yourself, not the version of you that's polished for the world, but the one who whispers truths you've been trained to ignore. The one who says, "This doesn't feel right." The one who knows when you're faking. You pause in those moments. You don't power through them. You listen. Then, you begin to choose self-loyalty in small, consistent ways. Not by becoming loud or brash or unshakably certain, but by becoming honest. Honest with how you speak to yourself. Honest with what you say yes to. Honest with when you're tired, when you're done, when you've had enough. And when the fear comes, and it will, you let it walk beside you, not lead you. One of the most powerful things you can do is stop apologizing for your needs. Stop dressing them up as inconveniences. Stop pretending you're fine when you're not. Confidence is saying, "This matters to me." Confidence is saying no. It's canceling a plan when you need rest, instead of forcing yourself to perform energy you don't have. It's standing in front of your closet and wearing what makes you feel like you, not what makes you feel seen. If you don't know where to start, begin by catching the moment you abandon yourself. For some of us, it's in a meeting when we stay silent. For others, it's in front of the camera when we suck in our stomach. Or in texts we send pretending not to care. Catch it. Pause. Ask yourself, what would it look like to stay loyal to myself right now? Then do that. You don't need a full rebrand. You need micro-loyalty. You need to practice trusting your own voice more than you fear someone else's disapproval. You need to stop rehearsing how to be liked and start remembering who you were before you learned to perform. Maybe that means unfollowing accounts that make you feel like you're not enough. Maybe it means journaling at night to get honest with your fears. Maybe it means looking in the mirror and saying, "I'm not going to edit this moment." Whatever it is, start where you are. Start gently, but start. Because the longer you wait to be yourself, the longer you wait to feel real peace. And real peace is what confidence is built on. Not applause, not perfection, not validation. Just the steady, quiet choice to stay with yourself. Again and again and again. I used to think confidence would feel like fire, like standing on a stage and commanding attention, like walking into a room and turning heads, like arriving somewhere louder, shinier, more impressive than before. But what I found was something entirely different. It felt like stillness, like breath, like finally coming home to myself after years of pretending to live somewhere else. The most profound gain wasn't visibility. It was peace. It wasn't being told I was enough. It was knowing it without needing proof. And once that knowing arrived, I started showing up differently. Not with arrogance, not with a curated brand of self-love, but with a kind of gentle certainty that couldn't be shaken by a bad photo or a silent room. I laughed more. I apologized less. I said, "I don't know," and felt no shame. I shared my ideas even when my hands trembled. And when people didn't understand me, I didn't contort myself to become more digestible. I let the misunderstanding sit because I understood me. And that was enough. This is the gift of real confidence. It frees you not to need constant reassurance. It gives you back to yourself. It invites you to love others without losing yourself in the process. And it teaches you that being beautiful might get you compliments, but being honest with yourself will give you something far better: clarity, calm, and a life that fits. But here's the twist I never saw coming, the one that continues to unfold even now. Once you stop performing for love and start standing in your truth, something else begins to happen. You stop needing confidence to prove you belong, and you start building something deeper than confidence, something quieter, something stronger. Next time we'll talk about that, if this spoke to you. Like, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear this today.